In August 1947, entire cities fell silent overnight. Trains arrived at stations filled not with passengers, but with the dead. Villages that had stood for centuries were abandoned within hours. Families who had never crossed a district boundary suddenly found themselves on desperate journeys across a line that had not existed days before. In one of the largest forced migrations in human history, more than 14 million people were uprooted, not by natural disaster or invasion, but by a political decision drawn across a map. The roots of this upheaval stretched back nearly 2 centuries. By the mid-18th century, the Indian subcontinent had come under increasing control of the British East India Company, and later the British Crown. Over time, British rule reshaped the political, economic, and social fabric of the region. Railways connected distant provinces, administrative systems centralized authority, and English education created a new political consciousness among Indians. Yet alongside these developments, divisions were also reinforced. Religious identities, particularly between Hindus and Muslims, were increasingly emphasized in administrative policies and political representation. By the early 20th century, calls for independence had grown stronger. The Indian National Congress emerged as a major political force advocating for self-rule, while the All India Muslim League, formed in 1906, sought to protect the political rights of Muslims who feared becoming a minority in a Hindu-majority independent India. Initially, both groups cooperated at times, particularly during movements against British rule. However, their visions for the future of the subcontinent gradually diverged. The 1930s and 1940s marked a decisive shift. Constitutional negotiations between Indian leaders and the British failed to produce a consensus. The idea of a separate Muslim homeland gained traction, particularly under the leadership of Muhammad Ali Jinnah. He argued that Muslims were a distinct nation with their own identity, deserving of a separate state. This demand culminated in the Lahore Resolution of 1940, which called for independent states in Muslim-majority regions. At the same time, the Indian National Congress, led by figures such as Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru, continued to advocate for a unified India. They emphasized secular governance and national unity, but mistrust between communities had deepened. Communal tensions escalated, particularly during the final years of British rule. Incidents of violence became more frequent, especially in Bengal and Punjab, regions with mixed populations and complex histories of coexistence. The end of the Second World War accelerated the timeline. Britain, weakened economically and politically, recognized that it could no longer sustain its empire in India. In 1946, the cabinet mission attempted to propose a united but federal India. The plan ultimately failed, as disagreements between Congress and the Muslim League persisted. By early 1947, the situation had deteriorated further, with widespread communal violence breaking out in several regions. In February 1947, the British government announced its intention to transfer power no later than June 1948. However, the urgency of the situation led to an even faster withdrawal. Lord Louis Mountbatten was appointed as the last Viceroy of India, tasked with overseeing the transition. Faced with mounting violence and political deadlock, he concluded that partition was the only viable solution. The decision to divide the subcontinent into 2 independent dominions, India and Pakistan, was formalized in June 1947. Pakistan would consist of 2 geographically separate regions, West Pakistan, comprising parts of Punjab and Sindh, and East Pakistan, located in Bengal. The exact boundaries, however, had yet to be determined. To draw these borders, a British lawyer named Cyril Radcliffe was appointed. He had never been to India before and was given just 5 weeks to divide territories based on religious demographics, administrative considerations, and other factors. Working under immense pressure and limited information, Radcliffe produced what became known as the Radcliffe Line. The announcement of independence came on August 14 and 15, 1947. Pakistan was declared on August 14, followed by India on August 15. Yet the boundary lines were not publicly revealed until 2 days later. By then, millions of people had already begun moving, uncertain of where they would end up. The consequences were immediate and catastrophic. As news of the partition spread, fear and uncertainty gripped communities. In Punjab, one of the hardest hit regions, entire populations began migrating in opposite directions. Muslims moved toward Pakistan, while Hindus and Sikhs headed toward India. Caravans of refugees stretched for miles, traveling on foot, by bullock cart, and in overcrowded trains. Violence erupted on an unprecedented scale. Communal tensions that had been building for years exploded into riots, killings, and arson. Villages were attacked, homes destroyed, and countless lives lost. Trains carrying refugees were frequently targeted, becoming symbols of both hope and tragedy. Many arrived at their destinations filled with victims of violence, a stark reminder of the human cost of partition. Estimates suggest that between 200,000 and 1 million people lost their lives during this period. The exact number remains uncertain, as records were incomplete and many incidents went undocumented. What is clear is the scale of displacement. Approximately 14 to 15 million people crossed borders within a matter of months, making it one of the largest migrations in recorded history. The human impact extended far beyond immediate loss. Families were separated, often permanently. Women faced particular hardships, including abduction and displacement. Efforts were later made by both governments to recover and repatriate abducted women, but these efforts were complex and not always successful. Refugee camps were established across both India and Pakistan to accommodate the massive influx of displaced people. Conditions in these camps were often overcrowded and lacked adequate resources. Disease, malnutrition, and trauma were widespread. Governments struggled to provide shelter, food, and medical care on such a large scale. In urban centers, the demographic landscape changed rapidly. Cities like Lahore, Delhi, and Karachi saw dramatic shifts in population. Properties were abandoned, seized, or redistributed. Economic systems were disrupted, as businesses lost owners and skilled workers relocated. The administrative challenges were immense, requiring new governments to build institutions while managing a humanitarian crisis. The political consequences were equally significant. The creation of India and Pakistan marked the end of British colonial rule, but it also introduced new tensions between the two nations. Disputes over territory, particularly in Kashmir, emerged almost immediately and led to armed conflict within months of independence. These tensions have continued to shape relations between the two countries for decades. Despite the scale of the tragedy, there were also instances of resilience and cooperation. In some areas, communities worked together to protect one another, defying the broader trend of violence. Individuals risked their lives to shelter neighbors of different faiths. These acts, though less documented, offer a more complex understanding of the period. Over time, both India and Pakistan began the process of rebuilding. Refugees integrated into new communities, contributing to economic and cultural life. Governments implemented policies to address displacement, though challenges persisted for years. The memory of partition, however, remained deeply embedded in the collective consciousness of both nations. Historians continue to study the events of 1947, examining the decisions that led to partition and the factors that shaped its outcome. Some argue that the division was inevitable, given the political climate and communal tensions. Others believe that alternative solutions may have been possible, though difficult to achieve. The role of British policy, the actions of political leaders, and the dynamics of local communities all remain subjects of ongoing analysis. The legacy of partition is visible not only in political boundaries but also in cultural and social identities. It influenced literature, film, and public discourse, shaping how generations understand their history. For many families, the stories of displacement and survival have been passed down, preserving personal accounts of a transformative moment. Today, the borders drawn in 1947 continue to define the region. India and Pakistan have developed along distinct paths, each with its own political systems, challenges, and achievements. Yet the shared history of partition remains a point of reflection and, at times, tension. The events of 1947 demonstrate how decisions made at the highest levels can have profound consequences for ordinary people. The partition of India was not merely a political act, it was a human experience marked by loss, resilience, and transformation. It reshaped the lives of millions in ways that continue to resonate. In the end, the story of partition is not only about division but also about the enduring impact of history. It serves as a reminder of the complexities of identity, the consequences of political choices, and the resilience of those who endure them.